The Cold War is at its peak, and the Air Force has a problem. Bombers need fuel. Fuel comes from tankers, and tankers can be shot down. They need a bomber that can stay airborne indefinitely, taking off from Texas, circling Soviet airspace for weeks, waiting for the order, always ready to strike. The solution seems obvious: nuclear power. The same technology that destroys cities could keep a plane in the air forever. It sounds like mad scientist fiction, but between 1955 and 1957, the United States actually flew a bomber with a live, critical nuclear reactor on board, not nuclear weapons. A functioning reactor generating 3 megawatts of heat, flying over American cities with nothing but lead shielding between the crew and lethal radiation. It was the most dangerous machine ever allowed in American airspace. If it crashed, it wouldn't just be a tragedy, it would be a flying Chernobyl. Welcome to Shadow Works. Today we open the file on the Convair NB-36H, the Crusader, the plane that proved nuclear flight was possible but insane. The physics are deceptively simple. Jet engines work by heating air to create thrust, and normally you burn fuel to generate that heat. But a nuclear reactor produces essentially unlimited heat-run air directly through the reactor core. Superheat it to thousands of degrees, expel it out the back, and you have infinite thrust for as long as the reactor stays critical. No fuel tanks, no refueling, just continuous atomic fire pushing you through the sky. On paper, it's brilliant. In practice, it's a flying Chernobyl waiting to happen. But here's the nightmare. Gamma radiation doesn't care about altitude, and a 3 megawatt reactor at operational temperature is spewing lethal doses in all directions. To protect the crew from being cooked alive by their own power source, engineers had to build what they grimly called the shadow shield. 12 tons of lead and rubber encasing the entire cockpit like a vault. The windshield wasn't glass, it was leaded crystal 6 inches thick, tinted green from the lead content, reducing visibility to barely functional levels. The pilots weren't flying a plane. They were sealed inside a lead coffin with a tiny green-tinted window. And behind them, just 50 feet away, sat an exposed nuclear reactor pumping radiation into the sky. And here's what the shadow shield didn't protect: everything else. The sides of the aircraft, the rear fuselage, the tail section, completely unshielded, because adding enough lead to protect the entire plane would make it too heavy to fly. So the reactor just radiated freely in every direction except forward. The NB-36H left a trail of radioactive exhaust across the American Southwest with every test flight, and ground crews could only approach the aircraft wearing full dosimetry badges and protective gear after it landed. Between 1955 and 1957, the NB-36H flew 47 test missions over Texas and New Mexico, 47 times that a flying nuclear reactor traveled through American airspace, and 47 times that a single mechanical failure or pilot error could have created an extinction-level contamination event. Every takeoff required presidential notification. Every flight path was carefully plotted to avoid population centers. And every time the Crusader's engines spooled up, the Air Force was gambling that today wouldn't be the day it fell out of the sky. The NB-36H never flew alone at sea. 97 transport aircraft shadowed every mission, carrying a full platoon of Marines in radiation suits with weapons, tools, and one set of orders that wasn't written down anywhere. If the nuclear bomber went down, the Marines would parachute to the crash site immediately, not to rescue survivors, not to investigate, but to establish a perimeter at gunpoint and keep civilians away from the glowing wreckage no matter what. They were the world's first nuclear cleanup death squad, and their job was to contain an atomic disaster before anyone realized it had happened. The program nearly ended in disaster during the 23rd test flight when engine number 3 lost oil pressure over Fort Worth, a city of 350,000 people. The pilots had 3 options: attempt an emergency landing with a live reactor, ditch in Lake Worth, and contaminate the city's water supply, or stay airborne and hope the engine didn't catch fire. They chose option 3, nursing the dying engine for 40 agonizing minutes until they cleared populated areas. The engine held, barely. When engineers inspected it after landing, they found metal shavings throughout the system. It had been minutes away from catastrophic failure. That was the moment everyone realized, you can't plan for every scenario. And Murphy's Law doesn't care about your shielding calculations. The NB-36H proved nuclear flight was possible, but two developments killed the program. First, technology moved too fast. By 1960. ICBMs could hit Moscow in 30 minutes from underground silos in Montana, making the entire concept of long-endurance bombers obsolete overnight. Why spend billions on a flying reactor when a missile could do the same job faster and without risking contamination of your own territory? Second, and more damning, was the crash test engineers ran simulations and realized there was no way to make the reactor crash-proof. No amount of steel could protect a reactor core from a 500 miles per hour impact with the ground. Best case scenario, localized contamination. Worst case, airborne plutonium particles spreading across multiple states, and you'd be nuking yourself. In 1961, President Kennedy personally ordered the program terminated, not delayed, not mothballed, but killed and buried. The reactor was removed from the NB-36H under armed guard, transported to a classified disposal site, and entombed in concrete and steel. The airframe was scrapped and the pieces scattered to prevent anyone from reassembling it. Every document was classified, every engineer was debriefed and told to never speak about it publicly. The government wanted this idea dead and forgotten, because they'd proven something terrifying. Nuclear flight works, but the consequences of failure are apocalyptic. But the idea never truly died. It just waited for an environment where a crash wouldn't matter. In 2023, DARPA announced Project Draco, a nuclear thermal propulsion system for spacecraft. The same principle as the NB-36H, the same physics, but this time designed for the one place where a reactor leak won't contaminate anything, the vacuum of space. We finally figured out where nuclear engines belong, as far from Earth as possible. The NB-36H taught us that some technologies are perfect in theory, but catastrophic in practice. And sometimes the difference between genius and madness is just altitude. You've now completed Season 2 of Shadow Works. We've investigated planes with backward wings, hypersonic aircraft that officially don't exist, flying aircraft carriers that were too dangerous to fly, and now a nuclear reactor that actually flew over your grandparents' heads in 1957. These weren't fantasies. These were real machines built by real engineers who pushed past every reasonable safety limit to answer one question. Can we? They never stopped to ask, should we? Season 2 was about machines that pushed engineering to the breaking point. Season 3 is about something worse: experiments that pushed human beings to the breaking point. The Havana Syndrome, sonic weapons or mass hysteria. Project MKUltra, the CIS mind control experiments on unwitting American citizens. And the heart attack gun, the assassination weapon that leaves no evidence. We've explored the weapons they aimed at enemies. Next, we investigate the weapons they aimed at us. Make sure you are subscribed. The files are opening soon.